Hey YouTube, it's been a while since I posted any videos, but I wanted to share a project with you. I'm reshafting some Callaway Hawkeye VFT irons. I'm going to show you my shaft puller that I made. I stole the idea online and tried to make some improvements, and a couple of 3D prints that are helping things along too. So let's get going. First thing I needed was a shaft extractor. I'm looking around on Golf WRX and some other places. I saw some people that had made an extractor out of Harbor Freight, Machinist Vice, and a just a regular bottle jack. Now this is a 2-ton bottle jack that I got at Advance Auto Parts. It was, I think, around $14 with coupon. And I did a couple things different than some of the ones I'd seen online. I know people were having trouble with this particular assembly, wanting to, kind of wander a little bit because they would maybe tape this up or whatever. So what I did was I actually ground this down a little bit and got a 3/4 inch pipe and split it and drove it onto the jack. Now you have to put the T on top first because you don't want to mess your threads up. I actually heated this up with a torch, drove it on, and then used that clamp, and it's pretty solid. Putting it together, I actually took an angle grinder, and you can see I notched this out so that I could put the jack over more so that it's a little more centered. And then I also took the angle grinder. Be tough to see this if I can get this to focus, but I ground on both of these. There's two sides here. I ground a little recess in there in the center of this slot for the jack to sit in, and it worked out pretty well. It's super solid, and when you do pump the jack arm, it is pushing directly against the base of the vise down in here. This little ledge right here. It's pushing directly against that, so you don't have any flex with any wood or anything like that involved. So that's worked out real well. Now up here on the top, I just took a U-bolt. This was tough to get this to fit, but once I screwed it down, I again cut this off and polished that up so that I don't have any sharp edges showing. Then I just added a couple pieces of wood. The wood actually, the jack doesn't even push against the wood. The wood is just sitting under the jack. And I got some wood screws and some washers here holding this piece in. Then I teed off of that right against the body of the jack down here. Got some screws coming up in here and one down in here. And it works really well, super solid. Now probably the hardest part to make, the part I spent the most time on, was this guy right here. I wanted this to be pretty sturdy. So what I did was I put another piece of 3/4 pipe in here, loaded up a shaft with my little rubber grippy here, slid it up, marked where the center was, and then I drilled all the way through this with a pilot hole through that center. And I went back through it with a drill bit that I had used a digital caliper on, and found a drill bit that was right at 0.375, just lucked into one really. Drilled that through. Went down here on the bottom side and used like a 0.4 something drill bit. If I can get this to focus. Oh my gosh. Samsung. Anyway, you want the bottom to be a little bit larger. And then I just simply took a Dremel and a wheel, cut tangent lines from here down on both sides. And I left them a little bit tight in there. Then I took them over here on the belt sander. Put the split, if you can imagine, putting the split in here and even both sides off with the belt sander. Then I buffed them because I wanted this top to be as smooth as possible. I didn't want it to have any damaging sharp edges on it. And of course on the titanium irons I've used so far, no damage. The titanium actually bit into this soft metal here a little bit. But again, no flex. It works fantastic. And when I was grinding this, I started this flat here with the angle grinder and finished it up on the belt sander. It's really hard to tell, but it has a slight tilt down, towards, with the tip's kind of up on it. So if there is any little bit of flex, the shaft's not going to want to slide out of there. It's going to actually bend down level. So when you're grinding that, try to grind the back area just a little more than the front, so you have just a little bit of a slope going towards the back of the slot there. But it works great. I'm getting ready to throw the last one of these bad boys on here, and I want to try and film it and see if we can get a pull. Oh, excuse my dirty porch, by the way. I have a huge dog. It's been really nasty here in Virginia, and he has really been keeping it messed up around here. So, you've seen this done a bazillion times, I'm sure. Just want to heat this up a little bit. You'll see the ferrule just sort of start smoking. Get just a little bit warm. And I like to take a knife and sort of lever, get it kind of against here, and then sort of lever these down just like that. Just takes a little bit of leverage and it pops right out. Okay, I'll throw it here in the extractor. So I like to line this up, get this down far enough where it'll fit inside here like so. And I usually put the rubber all the way to the far end of the vise, so when the vise tightens up, it'll have a bit of a wedge shape, so the harder you pull, the tighter it'll get. I'm going to turn the head of this up because this area here on these clubs really needs to be heated, and it's easier access if you'll turn it up. And I find when tightening this particular one up, this is just your average, shaft off your shaft guard off Amazon. If you'll tighten it up so that just leaning on this little peg here, you don't want to go crazy. Just want to have it so you're sort of leaning on it there, so that just the upper body weight is enough. And if it slips, you can always tighten it up. If you crack it, if you want to use it again, it's too late. I'm probably not going to use these again. These are the ascending weight graphite shafts, the System 75s. Okay, so let's get a little heat going on here. I normally would use a smaller torch than this, but these titaniums are notorious for not conducting heat. So I initially tried using a Dremel and a cutoff wheel to slot the tips of the shafts by hand. That was just a disaster. They just did not turn out the way I wanted. So I drew up in CAD and 3D printed a guide, and that fits on the end of the Milwaukee here. It may fit a Dremel. I'm not sure. I haven't tried. But it actually fits pretty snug. Just like so. Put your cutting wheel in. And get it to go in. There we go. And go ahead and line this thing up so that it indexes properly, if it'll focus here. So you can see I want this to line up in the center of this slot like so, so that when I'm twisting this and cutting the slots in the shaft, it'll be right in the middle. Okay, for these Callaways, you generally tip them a ½ inch less to allow for all this, extra distance you're going to need to make it all the way down here to the bottom of the club. So for my 9-iron, I'm going to be tipping it 3 inches. So I want to set my caliper on 3 inches. Just like so. Gosh, seems like a lot. Mark it. Okay, look at that again, and I say I'm going to cut that line in half. I usually cut a little above it, and then I'll turn the rest down on my belt sander. Now when I do a shaft, I've got a little, excuse my home maintenance, I've got a little screw that sticks out of my porch post. This is some redneck stuff here. And then by using this little adapter here, you can set this right where you want it and move this right over. Now, sometimes you might have to take a little off first, just like this one. I'm going to have to cut this. And I can get in here and cut this other one because you can see it's too long. Okay, I went ahead and cut off a couple pieces so that I could get in here where I needed to be. See, right there is where we need to cut. So I'll get this set up, turned on. And there we go, nice and roughed up. Now for some slots. See our slots here or not. Okay, next step is to sort of get everything test fit, make sure it's going to go together okay before we glue. I did draw these up in CAD also. These are some 3D printed ferrules, and I did the blue to match the heads. I also did some shaft pins. These are printed in PETG, which should be pretty resistant to heat for, you know, if you were to leave your clubs in the trunk. But what's nice is I was able to dimension these so that everything just fits, and I don't have to worry about doing any finishing. So let me see if I can get this dry fit, and we'll see if we've got enough splits for this to fit all the way up until the head is even with the end of our, the shaft is even with the end of our head. Got to get a real hosel brush. I'm using this brass gun cleaning brush, and I did finally get it clean. I did have to heat it up, do some scraping and whatnot. I don't know if you can see or not. I was going to try to show you how. Can you see that step down in there? That is why we have to put those slots in. This thing goes 370 all the way to that step, and then the shaft will not go any further. I guess you could grind it down, but then you're going to, I don't know, you're going to be taking a lot off the shaft. Okay. I don't know if you can see that, but I think that'll do. So now we'll just put some epoxy in. These pins will go in. I printed these pins in 2 parts because it's really hard to 3D print something that is round. Before I do the glue up, I do like to buff this. You'll have to excuse this old equipment. It's been dug out of my old building down there. Don't have any power at my little workhouse right now, so I drug all this out just so I could use it for this little project. So let's see what's on now. Wow. So right here is kind of the difference. You can see not a huge difference. The titanium actually keeps its finish really well, but it's a lot easier to do around your hosel while it's not got a shaft in it. So I'll finish buffing this up and then we'll do the glue up. Because of how this goes together, you're going to want to put epoxy on the inside of the head, the outside of the shaft, work epoxy down in each one of those little splits here on the end of your shaft, and I work some epoxy back on the inside of the shaft, because if you don't, you may have a void after you put these pins in and sand everything down. So you get a little extra, you know, have a little extra epoxy when you're working on these Callaways. Of course, you see this is clear, so I know this is not normally there. Again, you guys know I'm not an expert. This is just how I do it. Definitely no professional. But I like to take just a little piece of shaft. I'll shoot a little bit of that graphite onto my epoxy, and that'll blacken it up. Just like to twist it as I put it in there. And I know everyone hates this, but I am doing my Matrix Studio graphics up. I just like that look, all the blue and white. Once I've got that, I'll put my pins in. There's plenty of extra epoxy oozing out here, so I'll use a little bit of that. And you got to have some paper towel standing by, or some cloths. Cloths actually work better. A little acetone, and we'll wipe this down, wipe off the extra. Just going to drive that in. Normally use a block of wood. My tool works fine here. Don't use lithium batteries as hammers. Not a lot of pressure here though. Just want it snug. Don't want to go crazy. So we're all glued up, and I've let this dry for 2 days. Had to go golf yesterday, so it's had a good chance to dry. I'm going to take this down now. You could, probably cut this with the Dremel. You'd have to be really careful. I like to just take it down on about a 100 grit until I get close, and then I'll switch over to a 500 and take it down the rest of the way. So starting here with a 100. Okay, so I'll usually take it down about like that. It's a little bit rough with the 500, but I can buff that down. So let's put it on the buffer. Using some white compound over here. I was using some black over here from Brownells. I'll fill those in with some epoxy. I like to go back over these raw ends because the fibers are exposed here. And after I butt trim these, I'll seal them up with just a little brush of epoxy over top. When I measure my clubs, I like to use this drywall square. This is from Harbor Freight. I'm just cutting mine to length based on the Golfworks standard graphite lengths. And to get your measurement pretty accurate, you can use one of these. This is made for drywall. It keys in here and makes a 90, but you can also loosen this up, and you can set this so that you're touching center on your club, and then you want this edge to go down here and hit the 0. So if you've got that and you got your shaft parallel, you can go up here and measure it and get some really accurate measurements. So that's worked out well for me. I just thought I'd share that. Okay, I've got my 9-iron cut to length. Now I like to take the belt sander and cut a little chamfer around the edge here, and then dress that up just a little bit on the buffing wheel so the grip can slide on really easy, and you won't get any tearing or anything on the inside of your grip. Now I've been having golfer's elbow. I know this is crazy overkill, but I wanted to try this. So I've been making some little homemade inserts here to put in the graphite shafts. So basically these are some small straws. You can get it at most of your fast food places. Now I've got some foam here. This is weather seal, and you want the open seal. This is 3/8 by 3/16, and you just put it down in one end. That's how I do it anyway. Pinch that to get it to stick. I'm just going to roll this around. A little bit more of an angle than that. that in. And there you go. There's your insert. Goes in. I usually push it down about 6 inches. I've checked the swing weight scale. I can't tell that this makes any difference. I'm sure it makes maybe a 1/4 point of difference in swing weight, but very small, so I wouldn't really worry about that. But you know, anything that'll take a little bit of vibration out, I'm all for it. And here's my fancy gripping station. I use an airbrush compressor to put these grips on, and I found with these grips I'm using, these are the Lampkin X10s. You don't need, you know, any tape or anything like that. They go on and they stay in place on a graphite shaft. Now, if you were putting this on a steel shaft, you may want to put some masking tape on here. Sticky side down. You don't have to have anything sticky, just something for some traction, and that usually holds pretty well. I ordered this from the folks at Lampkin, and they sent me a little goodie envelope in here, and it has, you know, some little golf grip cleaning wipes and a little thank you card and a little ball marker. Pretty sweet. But these X10s are very flexible, so you can take this, if I can do this one-handed, and I'm just going to grab it like this and place it over the top like that. You got to get it started. Turn on our compressor. Now this is just what the end looks like when it's unscrewed from the airbrush. If this thing would focus, it would be wonderful. There we go. All right, so it's kind of hard to get this center. It takes me a minute, but you just put that, you know, on the center here, get your little air going, and push it down. It's best to line it up before you push it all the way down, because once you push it all the way down, it sort of seals off the top of the shaft and the air can't get up into the grip. So I'm going to line it up as I put it down here. There we go. Check out that alignment. Looks good to me. And there you go. Yeah, these are going to be lots of logos in the way when I'm hitting, but I don't know. I like that part. I like this to look like a NASCAR racer. So there's our finished club, boys and girls. And I'll go check the swing weight on that. These have all been turning out right where I wanted them, right around D2. And I may actually add a little bit of weight to these guys on the lower end. The way these are built, you can actually put some lead tape behind here and hide it, so that's pretty sweet if you want to do some tinkering with MOI matching. But as they are right now, I think I'm going to really enjoy these, and I appreciate you guys watching. I hope you learned a little something from this, and if you tackle this yourself, I wish you the best of luck. There's my next project. And there's why my porch is so dirty. Yep. There is the problem. Right? When are you going to mow this grass?